Hey there, it's Maddie, and today we're making the 2-day cookie. So the 2-day cookie is a chocolate chip cookie that you prepare beforehand and put in the refrigerator for 48 hours, and it lets all the ingredients soak and absorb together, and it creates a really rich and delicious chocolate chip cookie. So let's get cooking good looking. First thing you're going to need is 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You're going to need 1.5 cups of packed dark brown sugar, 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, 2 tablespoons of vanilla, 2 tablespoons of salt. It's 2 teaspoons of vanilla and 2 teaspoons of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 2 sticks of unsalted butter, 2 tablespoons of espresso powder. Again, it's 2 teaspoons of espresso powder. We couldn't find espresso powder, so instead we just grinded up some espresso beans in this grinder that we have, and it works just as well, just the same. It's a great substitute if you can't find espresso powder. And we're also going to need 1 bar of 70% dark chocolate, 2 large white eggs, and then we're going to make a toffee for our batter, and you're going to need 3/4 cup of light brown sugar, 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and 1 teaspoon of salt. So let's get started. First thing you're going to need to do is line your pan with parchment paper. We're going to make the toffee. Okay, so we're going to make our toffee in a medium-sized saucepan. You're going to want to put in 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter and put your heat on medium to high heat. Then you're going to want to sprinkle in just about a teaspoon or so of salt. Then I sliced up my butter. It kind of makes it easier to melt and just a little bit quicker. You're going to want to put in 3/4 cup of light brown sugar. It's not super packed full. Then you're going to want to stir it until it gets combined. And you're going to want to make sure you continuously stir, or else it will burn on the bottom, the butter will burn. Okay, so this is about combined. The butter still needs to melt a little more, but you're just going to continue to stir, and it's going to be about 10 minutes of simmering. And if you have a candy thermometer, it's going to be around 290 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is about done. You can kind of do like this, and it kind of separates for about a second. So that's pretty much to the right consistency that you're going to need. So we're going to step to the side and we'll turn that heat off. We're going to step to the side, and we have our pre-parchment papered lined pan. And you're going to want to make sure that your parchment paper kind of hangs over your pan a little bit, because otherwise it might kind of roll out and then it will get on your pan. So now we're just going to leave that there for a minute, and once it gets to a little more room temperature. So now we're going to go ahead and put our toffee in the freezer. Okay, so now we've got our toffee made. We're about to put that in the freezer. We're going to make our brown butter, and you're going to put 2 sticks of unsalted butter in a pretty big pot, and you're going to let that melt at medium to high heat. You're going to let that melt, and it's going to start to bubble. So what we're doing right now is butter is made of mostly water, some milk solids, and butter fat. So right now we are evaporating off the butter fat and just going to have milk solids, but we're also evaporating off the water. So once we get this nice and melted, we're going to have to add in some ice. So it's also going to cool it down, because otherwise when we put it in our cookie dough batter, it's going to cook the eggs. Okay, so now our butter is melted and it's starting to kind of fizz up. So what you're going to want to see is a dark brown coloration, and it's going to start to smell kind of nutty. It smells really good, actually. So now our butter is getting pretty frothy. It's still not to that dark brown coloration that we want and that nutty smell. but there's a really scientific term for this. I'm not quite sure how to say it, and really what it does, it just makes stuff golden brown and really delicious. If you know what happens during this, comment down below, and I would like to know. Have it at about medium heat now. We turned it down a little bit. Okay, so it's starting to it's kind of frothy on the top, and if you kind of move it around, you can see that golden brown color that we're wanting. And if you smell it, it smells real nutty and really good. So now you're going to go ahead and turn your stove off, and you see that real dark golden brown color. And we're going to let it sit aside for a second and let it just cool for a minute. Then we're going to add in 3 ice cubes, one at a time, so that it doesn't start boiling over real bad. Because we need to add that water back. Okay, so we have it off of our hot side, and we're going to add 1 ice cube at a time. It's going to get real bubbly. It's going to, yeah. You're going to want to make sure you have a nice and big pot because it will get all frothy. So if you have a small pot, it might bubble over. So you're just going to let that melt. Once it starts getting that bubbly popcorn sound almost, we're going to add in 1 more ice cube, and the same thing, once that stops being that bubbly sound, we'll add our last ice cube. So this is what the finished product of our brown butter looks like. We're going to set this aside to get a little more room temperature. It's cooled down because of the ice cubes, but it still needs to cool down a little more before we put it in our batter because it will cook the eggs. So we'll set this aside for a minute while we work on our other. Okay, so now we're going to combine our dry ingredients. You're going to want to put your 1.5 cups of dark brown sugar in your bowl, your 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, get all of it in there, and our 2 teaspoons of substitution of our espresso powder. So now we're going to mix that all up. So now we're going to mix our 2 large eggs and vanilla in a smaller little bowl. And then we're going to have our 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Set that aside as well. And you're going to want to beat those together. Once the eggs and vanilla are beaten together, it kind of looks almost like iced coffee is what I think of it as. So once that's all beat together, we need to add our brown butter that we just made into our dry ingredients. So we're going to grab our pot from over there on the stove and pour it in with our dry ingredients. Then we're going to use a spatula and mix that together. It might look a little bit separate at the beginning, but that's what it's supposed to look like, so don't worry. Okay, now we're going to add our eggs and vanilla mixture in with that. Let me make sure it's not warm. And you want to make sure that it's not warm anymore because otherwise it will cook your eggs, and that's not what you want. Okay, and we're going to, again, spatula, fold that in. Once that's pretty well combined, you're going to want to add in your 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. It kind of makes a poof of smoke. So you're going to want to fold that in until there are no more streaks of flour in your batter. Did you know that the original chocolate chip cookie was actually made by accident? Yeah. So in 1930, in Whitman, Massachusetts, the Wakefield couple owned a toll house in there. They were, the wife, she was a cooker and she loved to bake treats for their customers. So she had this famous chocolate cookie. But one night, whenever she was making her cookie, she didn't have the chocolate I don't exactly know what it was because I don't think we really use it anymore. We don't use it, at least. But it made the cookie like an actual chocolate cookie. It didn't have little bits of chocolate like our chocolate chip cookies now have. But she didn't have any more of that chocolate. So instead, she used some Nestle chocolate bar, and she cut it up, and she figured that it would just melt and incorporate just like the other chocolate did. But instead, it made little pockets of chocolate, and it made the original chocolate chip cookie. And all her customers loved it, so she decided to continue making it. And they ended up having a deal, Nestle Chocolate Company, that she would get free chocolate bars if the Nestle Company could use their Toll House Inn name. So if you go and look on the Marcel's or like any kind of Nestle thing, it should still say Toll House Inn on that. But I thought that was really interesting that the first chocolate chip cookie was actually made by accident. We are going to need to chop up our chocolate bar, get out a nice little cutting board for your chocolate, and place it on your cutting board. And we're gonna it's gonna be like, not really sharp, but kind of just not exact little blocks. It's kind of haphazardly cut it, I guess. So let me grab a knife real quick. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start. It's like I said, it's not a mad science to any kind of way or shape you cut it. You can cut them bigger if you want big pockets of chocolate. You can cut them smaller if you don't really want those big pockets. But I think it's tastiest whenever you have pretty good sized pockets of chocolate in your cookies. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut them up. I got all of my chocolate chopped up. We're going to just put it into our batter and get all the fine little dusts and everything, because that's the best part of it. So now we are just gonna incorporate and mix that into our batter. So now we're gonna add in our toffee, grab it out of the freezer, and you're gonna want to take it and put it in a gallon-sized Ziploc baggie, and it should just peel right off of your parchment paper. It's frozen and hard enough. You can put it in your Ziploc baggie and just kind of hit it against your counter to get it nice and broken up and into chunks, kind of the same size that you cut up your chocolate bar is about the size you want to go for in your toffee. So it might be kind of a minute. So now we're going to pour in our toffee into our batter and stir that around in there with the chocolate chips. Alright, so I've scooped out all of our cookie dough onto a pan, and we're just going to put these in the refrigerator for 2 days, then we're going to come back and bake them. Alright, so it's been 2 days, and the long wait for your cookies is almost over. So we just got to wait about 20 more minutes. So I preheated the oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit or 163 degrees Celsius. I've done my research. So we're going to put these in for about 18 to 20 minutes or until the outside's crispy and the inside's chewy. Alright, so now we just got to set our timer. I'm going to set it for about 19 minutes and then we'll come back and we can look at them and see where they're at. I definitely recommend if you have too many cookies, you need 2 pans, do it in just 2 different batches so that one, they can be spread out and it won't just turn into one big cookie pan. And also that you can always have them on the top, because if you put it on the bottom, they can burn and the time will be different. You need to put it in for less time and it's just kind of confusing. All right, now we're gonna wait 20 minutes. Alright, so I got them out of the oven and I grinded up some Flaky Sea Salt on top, and I'm really excited. I'm going to try one. This pretty one on the top. It's really good. A mouthful. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. and hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell so you get notified next time I post a video. Comment down below if you have any recipe ideas that you want me to try in the future, because I will definitely try them. Say love you with Maddie. Au revoir!